All right. Hello. Welcome in, everybody. Hope everyone's having a great Tuesday. Brendan Glasheen with Gary and Thorne and Matt Lamarca. Tuesday slate. Next half hour, we'll have you covered. We'll dive into a variety of things on this show. We'll dive into some NBA later on in the show, maybe a quick NFL thought or two. There is some rumor mongling going on involving Mac
The
Jones.
Mongols?
The Mongols. Rumors involving the Mongols. Patriots, Odell Beckham Jr. connected to the Ravens. Is that to save some face for Lamar Jackson? Hey, Lamar, we might not give you this big fat contract, but we'll get OBJ for you. Is that what that is? Is that what that is? I don't know. But we'll start baseball. Gary and Thorne has a write-up for us available over at DraftKings Nation. 14 gamer, Arizona and San Diego.
Well, 11 gamer technically. That's some afternoon games. 11 p.m. 11 game 7 p.m. slate.
Got it. Right. For DFS purposes. Thank you. So 14 altogether, 11 game night slate. There it is. So there you go. You can find everything, of course, on DraftKings, and we've got the DraftKings Sportsbook at our side. Carrion, when you look at the slate today, a lot of aces on the mound today. You got Scherzer, Alcantara's on the mound, Bieber later in Oakland. What to you jumps out to you on the slate?
Yeah, this is always a fun one. You always get these weird crossover slates the first week of the season where some teams have played 5 games, some teams have played 4. So you get these weird slates where there's 7 or 8 aces and then just the worst of the worst below 7K. It's a really interesting dynamic too, because it's so early in the season with pricing that I would say there's probably more value than you're going to get most times of the season as well. So you could even create a scenario where maybe you can kind of work your way around 2 of those aces in a lineup and then build backwards from there. But I think the big decision you have to make on this slate is just which ace you're really just hitching your wagon to. And the top 4 guys in terms of price, I think Scherzer's probably in his own tier, although you could argue he has the worst matchup. Aside from that, you've got 3 very similar types of pitchers, particularly Julio Urias and Framber Valdez, who are not exactly known as like high strikeout, high upside fantasy pitchers, generally speaking, but they are 2 of the best pitchers we have in all of baseball, and 2 guys who have been about a strikeout per inning for the course of their career. They've also got fantastic matchups tonight, with Valdez going up against the Tigers, and then you've got Urias going up against the Rockies outside of Colorado. I think Julio is where I'm leaning of the 4 guys. He's $10,200. This Rockies team, I mean, look, picking against the Rockies away from Coors Field is not exactly the freshest idea in the world. I understand that, but when you look at the 5-game sample we have so far this season with the Rockies, they're striking out in almost 29% of their plate appearances. It just seems like this is the type of lineup on the road that can really just provide the upside to a pitcher that, again, is generally more of a floor guy than a ceiling guy. So I think I'd lean Julio, just the win expectancy and everything tied in with that. But again, if you want to go Scherzer, if you want to go Framber Valdez in a very, again, high win expectancy environment, I don't really hate that either.
All right. So, yeah, that's right. Valdez on the mound. Urias is another one on the bump tonight. Lamarca, you've got an article up as well previewing the baseball slate. Any thoughts? Well, first, reaction to Garion's idea of going to a Dodgers pitcher at Coors Field.
It's not at
Coors Field. Yeah. The Rockies are on the road, which has historically, it's been great. You know, they're, a really, really bad offensive team when they're outside of Coors Field. But ironically enough, I'm taking the Rockies today. They were in my write-up. You can get them at better than plus 200 on DraftKings Sportsbook. And again, I think this has been a common theme for me to start the year is I just think that the Dodgers are overvalued at the moment. They are still being perceived as this juggernaut team. And, to be fair, they do have 3 wins. 3 wins in their first 5 games, and their wins when they have won have been very impressive, but they're only 3-2. They lost 2 games against the Diamondbacks, who are not necessarily an offensive juggernaut. So, and Herman Marquez, you know, as the Rockies ace is an underwhelming ace, right? But when he's outside of Coors Field, he's proven that he's a decent pitcher, like a mid-threes ERA type of guy. So I think that this game could be on the lower scoring side. But the perception of the Dodgers, you know, they've won at least 104 games each of their past 3 full seasons. This does not feel like that same team to me. So I'm going to continue to fade the Dodgers at these price tags. And for DFS, that means that Urias for me, especially when combined with the fact that he's not a huge strikeout guy to begin with, like I definitely gravitate more towards Valdez and Scherzer than I do towards Urias for that reason.
Okay, very good. We've got the DraftKings contest pulled up as well. I just picked one of the big prize money contests, $300,000 prize pool.
That's the big one.
Say that again?
That's the big contest.
Oh, it is the one. Okay, apologies. Well, you know, there's so many options there. You pick and choose where you get. So there you go. What about? So neither of you touched on Shane Bieber facing the Oakland A's. Is that just
a perfectly fine matchup? Again, there's some really great matchups, and I think in a weird way, because Bieber obviously lost his fastball velocity last season, didn't really affect his strikeout numbers down the stretch of the season. It was a little bit wonky in April and May. And again, you've got Julio's not really a strikeout guy. Valdez is not really a strikeout guy necessarily. So maybe people just gravitate towards Max anyway. But I do think it's interesting that he's the most expensive in a clear tier of 4. And he also has the worst matchup in that clear tier of 4. So maybe you do get a little like people sleeping on Max Scherzer tonight. And maybe you gravitate up that way. I think the really interesting discussion is, what do you do to try to save money at pitcher? Because it's not only are you reaching into just depths that normally you don't want to go, but a lot of the guys towards the bottom end of this slate, like even Matt Strahm is a name that's like interesting sometimes, but you know, he's being converted from a reliever's role right now. He's going to be on a pitch cap. A lot of these guys are making their first start of the season. And we already saw that generally means you're going to be capped at like 85, 90 pitches max. So there's, you know, circumstances where you don't want to be using these guys in general. And then you tack on some of these pitch count concerns. I mean, it's crazy to me that Yusei Kikuchi could be like a really popular option tonight. Like it's kind of insane. Sorry?
He was awful last year. Awful.
Terrible. Absolutely terrible. But within that terribleness, you know, still had 124 strikeouts in 100 innings. Like he's still someone from a DFS capacity you go, there's upside here. There's ceiling. He went out and had the most strikeouts of any pitcher over the course of spring training, which again, spring training stats only mean something when you want them to mean something, granted. But you've also got a Royals team tonight that's no Vinny Pasquantino against the lefty, no MJ Melendez against the lefty. Like, I do think Kikuchi's probably a good option tonight, as scary as that sounds. I would even say if you're looking for a bet tonight, Kikuchi over 4.5 strikeouts. He might give up 6 earned runs as he gets those 5 strikeouts, but he's going to end this game with over 5 strikeouts.
I'm looking at because I remember last year he started really, really poorly. And
then he did not get better. That was a straight line across.
You look at his matchups, though, early last year: Yankees, Red Sox, Astros twice, Yankees 2 more times. Mm-hmm. He pitched well against Seattle. Angels, there is some, it's the American League, right? American League East packed in there as well. He didn't get any favors as far as the now, I think a year ago now, the Blue Jays had more, you would know, they had more confidence in him being a better middle of the rotation guy. Now I think
confidence is high right now. Again, he's pitched better the last 4 weeks than he's ever pitched in a Blue Jays uniform. And again, it was exhibition play, but it's not a high bar either.
It suits your agenda.
Again, it's a very interesting slate when you're projecting out these numbers and you go like, man, Yusei Kikuchi might carry like significant ownership tonight. And I don't necessarily know if I have a problem with it. But if you're making multiple builds here, know that if people are sticking Yusei Kikuchi into a ton of lineups, it would be very easy just to stack Royals, avoid Kikuchi entirely, and kind of go against where the field's going. I mean, it's one of the easier leverage plays I can remember seeing, just because, you say Kikuchi should probably never be like 25 to 30% owned on a slate.
Lamarca, Garion mentioned Strom is pitching today on Pitch Count. One of your money line picks is the Phillies.
Yep.
You've got confidence the Phillies can get this right, get their first win of the season tonight in New York.
Yeah, I mean, I felt better about it before the news that JT Realmuto wouldn't play, but because you look at this Phillies lineup, and it went from being one of these units that might be the best of the league to now they've got 4 or 5 guys in there towards the bottom that it's like, man, these guys might not hit their weight. So it's definitely a little bit concerning, but the fact that the Phillies are 0-4, like, I just think that they're probably a bit undervalued at the moment. Like, nothing has really fundamentally changed about this team. Like, they are missing some bats offensively, but they can still hit, those top few guys in the lineup. And Domingo Germán is not a guy that you should be fearing at pitcher. Playing in Yankee Stadium, I think this game has the potential for, a few balls to leave the stadium tonight. And I think Strom, for whatever he's used as a short relief, a short opener, or if they can get 4 or 5 innings out of him, whatever it may be, like I think he can match Germán. So I like the idea of grabbing the Phillies as underdogs here.
Something to keep in mind about today and tonight, New York, Boston, the wind is actually, I think, lending towards an under, while those ballparks, more so Yankee Stadium, is scary when it comes to both pitchers. Strom and Germán have had home run problems in their careers. The wind is actually blowing in, which would help entertain an under 8.5, or in Boston, Pittsburgh's case, an under 9, even though the Red Sox have been an over team early in the season.
Yeah, I mean, there's some crazy win numbers coming out of some of these stadiums. So you're right. We often only think of like Wrigley Field as the one place to check for wind before the game, but this could be a slate that definitely it warrants consideration.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I really like this Blue Jays Royals over, even though it's at 10 runs already. As you look at that wind, that's wind, 26 miles an hour, blowing out to left field, like it, and with both teams throwing left-handed pitchers, and there being an abundance of right-handed batters in the lineup, a lot of pull side power. So I think that that game has the potential for a lot of homers. If you're looking for a game that is going to hit a bunch of homers tonight, wink, nod. The Blue Jays and the Royals is a great starting point.
One of you mentioned Valdez. I think, was it Garion who mentioned Framber Valdez for the Astros?
He's come up a couple times, yeah.
He's one of your guys that you want to put in a lineup tonight?
Yeah, again, I think I would have him third behind Scherzer and behind Julio, but I think he's perfectly fine. Yeah, again, those top 4 pitchers tonight are just far and away better and safer and present higher ceilings than any other pitcher on this slate.
Something I was just going to counter or pick your brain on, just to hear your other side of it, possibly. The Tigers could not hit righties, but they could hit lefties last year. Is that something you factored in? There's
been a pretty significant roster turnover in Detroit too. And again, when we say they could hit lefties better than they hit righties, they were the worst team in baseball hitting right-handed pitching. It was like they were league average.
They were like the worst team in history hitting right-handed pitchers.
So they were going to be better against lefties. And look, I think there are some legitimate reasons to be concerned about Valdez this season. I think I don't think the shift rules are going to impact BABIP as much as maybe people think it's going to impact BABIP. However, when you talk about someone who is an extreme outlier, like Framber Valdez, someone who is producing almost a 70% ground ball rate, he in particular could be someone who is kind of getting a little bit more unlucky based on the way that the Astros, again, a very forward-thinking team, a team that used a lot of shifts last season. He could be someone individually affected maybe more than like your standard average sort of BABIP increase across Major League Baseball?
Generally speaking, what have you guys made of the rule changes and how it's affected your? Of course, there are circumstances where, okay, wind and weather, that is still like, that doesn't factor into a handicap when it comes to an individual game. But just overall, generally speaking, I know Gary and I talked about this a little bit last week after opening day, but LaMarca, any general takeaway from the rule changes and how it's, I know the stolen base thing has been eye-popping, right? Stolen base. Just anything,
I think that's
anything more that you have more of a keen eye on because of the rule changes now that you have a week or so sample?
Not really. I mean, the stolen base thing is the biggest. I don't think, like, I'm with Gary in that I don't think that the lack of shift is going to have a tremendous spike in like batted ball rates. Maybe you'll see some like just really extreme left-handed pull hitters who see a benefit, but for the most part, teams are still shifting, right? You're playing your shortstop as close to the second base bag as you can. So it's not like we're going back to how it was, in the prehistoric days where your shortstop played there and your third base was there. Like, they're still moving the defense to try and, play the batter within the allotted rules. So, like, I think that part has been overstated. And then the other thing is just the general enjoyment factor of games, for the most part, being under 3 hours, I think has been phenomenal. That doesn't really help from a betting perspective, but it has just been like a breath of fresh air to put on a game at 7:00 and have it be done by 10.
Yeah.
It's been really nice.
Would be maybe not neat, but it'd be kind of fun if there was a market for time of game. Like,
like a national anthem bet.
Yeah. Like time of game under 242.5 or something.
I mean, honestly, if you're betting unders, you're kind of betting the under on that anyway. Like, obviously there's massive correlation between like the amount of walks and base runners in a game with how long a game is taking. I think the BABIP thing is interesting. Like, I would say the one area that maybe I didn't think hard enough about, like, because we all think about the shifting rules pretty much exclusively in the sense that you have to have two position players on either side of second base. I maybe didn't quite realize the importance of the fact that all four of those infielders have to have their feet in the infield dirt. This might be a little just like narrative, but I think Mike Petriello actually tweeted out some numbers that back this up on Monday, where the increases in BABIP we've seen so far this season haven't been on ground balls. They've been on pop-ups. And it really does seem like those sort of Texas leaguers, the little bloop hits that fall in behind the shortstop and second baseman, those have been happening a little bit more this season because those guys aren't starting, 3-4 steps back into the outfield like they normally would be. So it might not even be a thing where like harder hit balls are being rewarded like we all sort of thought this would be the case. It's really mishits are being rewarded in the form of bloop singles and bloop doubles because middle infielders just aren't playing as far back as they used to.
We call those the Jeff McNeil special in New York.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other baseball thoughts? I saw LaMarca. You're also on the Twins. You're fading Sandy Alcantara. He hasn't looked like great. Had the One World Baseball Classic start opening day, had 4 walks to just 2 strikeouts.
Yeah, and I mean, I think kind of similar to how I'm approaching the Dodgers. Like, I think Sandy Alcantara is just a prime regression candidate this year. And that doesn't mean he's going to be a bad pitcher.
Right.
It just means he's not going to be a Cy Young caliber pitcher. Right. I mean, if you look at like his Sierra last year, it was pretty much in line with his career norm, which is being around a mid-3s pitcher. He doesn't generate big strikeouts, which is a big thing that you look for from a Cy Young level arm. He relies on soft contact and balls in play being turned out. So that kind of stuff can have a lot of noise year to year. So yeah, I think Sandy, I'm not expecting the walks to really be an issue. That was an issue for him on opening day, but he's not a terrible pitcher from a control perspective. I just think that, if a few more bloops find holes here and there this season, it's going to be tough for him to replicate those numbers. So I think he's just a little bit overpriced at the moment, and I'm fine with taking a flyer against him.
Big NBA Tuesday slate. It's like about time. I feel like these Tuesday, Thursday slates, they're just the national TV games. A big Tuesday slate. You start, look, a couple games to go for most of these teams, right? So you start factoring in what games mean something for some or
Start.
True.
He's been factoring that in for quite some time now.
All right, I take it back. Well, top of the conference teams seeding, you know what I meant. Like, for example, the Milwaukee Bucks are laying 2 touchdowns in Washington. Yeah, I felt like saying like 14, touchdowns.
It is. That's exactly what they're laying.
Like,
without Chris Middleton, too.
Without
well, the Wizards injury report is
I still might want to take the Bucks. I still might want to take the Bucks just because, like the Wizards are resting everyone with a pulse, or not resting. There are guys that are hurt, but
there have been more illnesses the past week in the NBA than I've seen since the COVID season. So take that how you will.
This feels very similar to me. Like the Bucks played, I want to say the Spurs a week or two ago, and they were laying 19 on the road.
And I bet the Spurs like an idiot.
And I think they won that game by like 40. So yeah. I could see that playing out pretty similarly here tonight.
I think to your point, Glash, just the oddity of this week in the NBA is obviously there was no games on Monday because of the national championship, which creates this weird dynamic where we've got back-to-back insane slates on Tuesday and Wednesday. So I think you're going to get a lot of teams like, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the Bucks can possibly clinch the 1 seed tonight with a win, or like essentially do it, right?
Yeah. So their magic number for the 1 seed is 3. So they could get it down to 1 tonight if they win and
Celtics lose.
Boston loses at Philly.
But either way, so like you've got a crazy amount of teams over the next 48 hours who are playing back-to-backs. And I think Milwaukee and Boston in particular are probably 2 teams. I know Jalen's status is up in the air tonight, but like, let's say Jalen plays and the Celtics win and the Bucks win. You could definitely see like some G League rosters out there for Milwaukee and Boston on Wednesday. Like, I think that's probably where kind of more in the realm of what's going to happen. Like, I think as it pertains to tonight, I'm with Matt. Like, I think I'm going to bet the Bucks just because they'll actually try to win this game because they'll play their starters. They want to win this game, and Washington is actively trying to lose this game. Like even someone like Denny Advia, who's been an amazing player for them with all these guys out, like they were almost like, nah, you're playing too well. Like you now have an elbow bruise, so you're out the next 2 games. Like,
Alone right too. Somebody who can score the ball a little bit, and they're, we'll give him the night off. I think he's technically questionable, but
yeah, I don't. It's very rare though. Someone gets like the downgrade to questionable because of an illness at 5:00, and they end up actually playing. So
yeah.
Anywhere else you guys might be leaning tonight in the association?
I like the Pels. I'm laying the 4.5 with the Pelicans. They have been the best defensive team in the league since the All-Star break. They're first in defensive efficiency over that time frame. And if you haven't been paying attention, Brandon Ingram has been on an absolute mission recently. He's got 26 plus in 10 straight games, maybe 9 straight games. And he's got some triple doubles over that time frame. He's playing as well right now as anybody in basketball. And Sacramento, they're in a weird spot where they're kind of locked into, it seems like, the number 3 seed. I don't think this game is like ultimately all that important to them, but the Pelicans are really fighting to try and get one of those final guaranteed play-in spots, or playoff spots, excuse me. I think they're only a half game behind the Warriors and Lakers right now. So if they can continue to win games here, they'll put themselves in a good shot to avoid the play-in tournament, get a guaranteed playoff spot. And they're playing like that matters to them. So I'll lay the points here with the Pels.
It would help the Pelicans if the Warriors were not at home. As we know, they do well at home, not well on the road. I think that's all the time.
They'll drop one at some point down the stretch.
I think that's all the time we have, fellas. I apologize with my technical issues that we were a little late getting on here. Unless either of you have 30 seconds on.
Glass, how do you feel about the fact that Lamar Jackson's going to be a Patriot?
They're not gonna do it.
The writing's on the wall, my friend.
Well, just when you think, I'll say this: the Florio report today on Mac Jones being shopped by the Patriots. Maybe Bill Belichick is active around the draft as opposed to free agency, but I don't see it. I would love it. I mean, if the Patriots have a 500 year and Mac Jones figures it out, Bill O'Brien, who Mac taught everything at Alabama, apparently. Like, Mac taught Bill O'Brien how to coach that Alabama offense. It's so annoying. Like, yeah, Bill O'Brien had no experience. Penn State, Houston, he coached Deshaun Watson. And Bill O'Brien had no idea walking into Bama with Nick Saban. Mac taught him the playbook. But if Mac has a good season, they're going to have to pay Mac Jones $35-40 million. So just pay Lamar Jackson now. The cap's only going up, and that position's only getting more expensive.
I think that's a really good way to look at it. That's a very good way to look at it.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if you at some point, Bill Belichick, you're going to have to pay the quarterback. So if you're not all in on this guy and you're sick of him being whiny, and I want to say other words I can't say on here, well, if that's the case, then move off him and then go pay someone you really want. Lamar Jackson. I don't think it's happening. That's all the time we have. Thank you all for listening and watching. There's your Patriots Lamar Jackson update minute. Thanks to Eamon and Cody behind the scenes. You can find Gary and Matt LaMarca over at DraftKings Nation, dknation.draftkings.com. They have content up for baseball and basketball often. LaMarca's got picks for tonight. Baseball money line picks. Gary and
3-0 on my first picks of the season, by the way.
Oh, they were. Okay. Well, hopefully you start hot like you did with the NFL last year. And Garian's also got picks up for the DFS slate available. dknation.draftkings.com. Thanks to Cody and Eamon. Brendan Glasheen signing off. You have a great rest of your Tuesday night. The slate's back tomorrow night after the 4 p.m. Eastern Madden Sim. And the sweat starts your day at 11 a.m.